Well, good morning, almost afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharda Jackson Smith. I serve as the Director of National Issues in Action for our state league. I'm also a part of the Greenville League's board. Myself, alongside fellow board member Joanne Day, we're here to talk about nonpartisanship. The League of Women Voters encourages informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding on major public policy issues, as well as to influence public policy through education and advocacy. In this pursuit, we believe that it is important to emphasize nonpartisanship between and within election cycles. The purpose of this portion of LEAD is to serve as a refresher on what it means to be nonpartisan. Its contents include pieces of information that was communicated at the League of Women Voters National Council meeting last year and has been communicated with the League of Women Voters of South Carolina Board and other local leaders. So let's get started. So our agenda this afternoon is really to talk about nonpartisanship, just defining it and making sure that we help coach you through responding to key issues. It's going to be pretty brief, this beginning session, and then eventually we're going to have you all break out into breakout rooms with Joanne Day. So the enduring challenge. In today's environment, we continue to face an enduring challenge to defend democracy. In such a contentious time, it's important for us to reflect on how to express ourselves and speaking for ourselves, and when speaking on behalf of the League. It's important to respond calmly, fairly, and intelligently, no matter the issue, and we totally acknowledge that even facts today can be seen as partisan. So today, we're going to offer some tips on practice, how we're going to respond in particular scenarios. Before we begin discussing nonpartisanship, I wanted to take some time for the good of the order to ensure that we understand the difference between nonpartisanship and bipartisanship. In some discussions, we sometimes see these terms surface amongst our members and the League. So it's important that we understand what they both are. If you look on the screen, it says bipartisanship generally refers to cooperation or agreement or a compromise between two political parties. And when I think of political parties, traditionally we think of Republican and Democrat or liberal and conservative, but remember that any two parties can engage in bipartisanship. So that could be the Green Party and the Alliance Party, for instance. But bipartisan means to work together towards a common goal. It also means that nonpartisan is remaining neutral. So as Lynn Teague mentioned earlier today, that ethics is something that the League endorses that requires bipartisanship. Today, we're going to focus on nonpartisanship specifically. So I'm just going to give you about 10 seconds or so to read the policy on the screen that comes directly from the League of Women Voters US. Take a moment to read that quote. Okay. This quote is kind of our overarching nonpartisanship policy. And it focuses on this idea that we neither support or oppose any political candidate. And that means that we're going to focus squarely on issues of concern. Something that we often say is that issues are not partisan. So when someone starts to challenge you on these things, remember that you let them know that the League does not support or oppose any particular candidate or policy. And just like the government works, there is a federal overarching theory that goes on, but there's also the state government functions. And so we work the same way, where we're going to have a federal or a national view of nonpartisanship. And South Carolina, our state functions underneath that. So at the state level, we want to make sure that we have tighter restrictions than that is at the national level. What's interesting about this slide that I want to make sure that I hit on is the fact that there are specific requirements for specific people in our organization. So if you are a part of the state board and you're serving as the president or the director for voter services, if you're a lobbyist, if you're speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters South Carolina, you can't hold an elective office. You can't campaign for any political party. But these are for people who have specific positions. Those who have those positions that I just mentioned, on this slide, it just talks about how they also cannot do anything that can be seen as being partisan. So they address social media specifically. They cannot attend fundraising events. They can't make campaign contributions. But what this means is that if you are not one of those people, that I mentioned before, such as a president, a lobbyist, or someone who speaks on behalf of South Carolina, and you're a state board member, you can attend fundraising events, you can sign petitions, and you can make campaign contributions. So that's sometimes a question that people have at the local level and at the state level. And so we thought it would be good to just kind of address that quickly before we go into things that the local leagues need to make sure that they're doing. So most League of Women Voter members are a part of a local league, which makes sure that we have a greater or more restrictive nonpartisan position. That means that you cannot do anything that is looser than the state or the national policy. So what that means is that at the local level, we need to make sure that we continue to revisit our nonpartisanship board policies, making sure that we review it and that we acknowledge it. Something that we wanted to also make sure that we mention before we get into the dilemmas is that we emphasize the one voice policy. Sometimes it's called speaking with one voice, or sometimes just the one voice policy. Remember, only the league president or a designee should be speaking on behalf of the league. If you are speaking on behalf of yourself, you want to make sure that you disclose that when you're in conversation. And so everyone needs to always be thinking, who from my local league is going to speak on behalf of the local league? And that question we have posted at the bottom. The reason why we do this is to make sure that we're staying clear and consistent in our messaging. When we have too many people trying to speak on behalf of a local league or the state, and even at the national level, sometimes our message is a bit blurred. So we want to make sure that we have someone who is going to make sure that they speak on behalf. And what that means is if someone brings a question to you and you're unsure or you feel uncomfortable answering that question, just tell them to go to your president of your local league or the state board. So how do we respond to partisan claims like these? We're talking about staying nonpartisan in hyper-partisan times. As I said earlier, it's an enduring challenge. Take a look at these two quotes that might have been presented to you or to other people who are around you that are a part of the league. These are just examples. They might say the league is really a part of the Democratic Party. They're all Democrats, or they might say they're not interested in good government. They're all a part of the Democratic Party. These are common quotes that we sometimes see that are presented either when we're at events or that might be sent through email. And it's important to reflect on what your experience has been so that when you get to this part, that you're able to respond appropriately. And that's our point of having our workshop today. So when people come to you and they claim that there is some partisanship, we want to make sure that we are remaining nonpartisan. And so we have to tell them and remind them that no party has a claim on any particular issue, that sometimes a candidate or a political party may agree with our position. They might even champion them, but that doesn't mean that the issue or the league itself is partisan. So we want to make sure that we state those things. And of course, over time, there's going to be an evolution of support. Public opinion is going to shift, but one thing that we never compromise is our values. So when you look at this slide, these are the things that we always will want. We will always want every voter to have equal access. We will always want a robust democracy. And we will always be fighting to make sure that our elected officials reflect the diverse makeup of the public. So this slide says the obvious, but we always just want to make sure that we stay consistent in this messaging and that we have not changed over the past 100 years. Our policies do not change over time. We are still nonpartisan. We will always fight to empower voters and to defend democracy. Now, what has changed significantly is the need to defend democracy. And we just got done with a very good panel discussion about civics education. And these things they're threatened right now. So we're going to continue to fight for voter or suppressing voter suppression, making sure that everyone has the right to vote, that we're going to fight to defend things that might be divisive. We're going to fight against lies and misinformation. That's our job. And so the next few slides, I have some tips here. Once again, I'll say that these tips were shared with local league leaders. And of course, we can send this out to you if you're not a part of the local league leaders or the state board. But these were pieces of advice that were offered to help people as they navigate through hyper-partisan times. And a lot of these actually relate to social media, because this is where we're seeing a lot of the partisanship start to surface or appear to surface. And so, for example, the first one says, retweet politicians when their tweets align with our advocacy. That is okay. You can retweet a politician. But the thing is that when you do that, you need to make sure that you're stating specifically and explicitly that you're voting on behalf of or you're retweeting on behalf of advocacy. There's a particular position that you agree with, not necessarily the politician themselves. And so the next one kind of says that. It says have your own political opinions. You can do that. But if they differ from the League of Women Voters position, that's when it's really important for you to slow down and think about whether this is good to post or not. It is okay to tag and call on politicians that take action that aligns with our advocacy, very close to what was stated earlier. And then joining in press conferences, panel discussions, participating in rallies, being a poll worker, those things are fine. That is not a part of being partisan. That's actually something that we recommend that you do, being a member of the League of Women Voters. Now, this slide, I want to slow down and I'm going to kind of go through each point because I just want to make sure that we understand it correctly. It is not okay to respond to politicians directly. So the last slide said that it was okay to retweet. And I just want to make sure that I say it again. It's not necessarily about retweeting a politician. It's about what is your intent? Is your intent to advocate for a particular policy, or is your intent to advocate for the politician? And that is something that we don't do. We don't support, we don't oppose any particular politician. We are remaining neutral, as what was said earlier. So with that being said, we can't call out a party as being good or bad. We can't advocate for how people should vote on candidates in particular. Remember, we're focused on issues, not particular people. And retweeting or sharing a political party's post is something that you shouldn't do. It's all about issues. Focus your remarks on an elected official. That is not something that you should do. You should not give an elected official a league award when they are running for re-election or hold an empty chair debate for candidates. That last one actually reminds me of an issue one time that we had where someone was not able to attend the debate that we thought that they would be able to attend. So we had to end up canceling it because we do not want to appear to be partisan. So lastly, I just want to kind of give you some tips for social media before we move on. What you like is visible. So when you decide not to retweet someone or to share, but you decide to like it, people still can see that as something that you support. So be careful with that. Never assume that your post can't be seen. Don't engage in arguments with something or with someone that probably won't result in your mission of converting them to your thoughts. Usually, sometimes that needs a conversation. Just simply doing that online through Facebook or Twitter usually is not the best approach. So when in doubt, you need to make sure that you contact your local president or the state board, and we can help you with those decisions.